Well, congrats! You survived the 2% correction that happened this week and didn't happen for 356 days. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about rotation. We're going to talk about megatech that's getting a bit hammered in the last few days. We're going to mainly look at all the news, and then we're going to touch upon next week, which is going to be dramatic. More than 33% of the S&P 500 companies are going to report next week, the biggest of the biggest. Are you ready for it? Let's start the weekly summary, then let's go. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Micha Stocks, and on this channel we talk about stocks, we talk about investments a bit, and we mainly talk about the news. Everything and anything that you see here is not financial advice. It's only for education and entertainment purpose only. This is our channel, 3.8K subscribers, where you can also subscribe and turn notifications on. And by that, you will be notified every week, same time, same place, where I upload the weekly summary. Let's dive in. Major averages. We talked about rotation, weekly rotation. 2 weeks ago, we said there's going to be a rotation. People are going to move from the heavy NASDAQ, heavy tech NASDAQ, into the Russell, into the small caps. Look what we got. NASDAQ for the week down 2.5%. Russell up 3.4%. That's a 5% difference between them. Actually, 5 basis points, not 5%, 500 basis points between them. And that is very, very dramatic because it's the second or third week that this has happened. Look at the major average. Look at the major indices. Look at utilities up 1.4%. XLV, which is healthcare, up 1.4%. And on the flip side, we see discretionary, communication, and technology lagging. People are taking money from that and moving someplace else. Bitcoin on a huge run up to around 69,000 while I'm recording this video. You might see the video later today or tomorrow and see the Bitcoin maybe at 70K, maybe at 72K, or maybe at 65. Ethereum down 5.5 for the week, although new ETH ETFs, now try saying that very fast, ETH ETFs launched this week. We're going to talk about them on the news portion. Silver and gold, not a good week for both. Crude oil and natural gas, even a worse week. Crude oil down 4.3% for the week, and natural gas 6% down for the week. And that brings us to the failure 7. The 7 big companies that this week wasn't their week. Amazon down only 0.3% because Jeff Bezos probably didn't sell enough this week. Meta down 2%, but when we look at the biggest laggers, we see Tesla down 8% for the week, mainly after her earnings report, and Google down 6%. A combination of earnings and OpenAI. We're going to talk about that. And that, of course, brings us to the companies that reported earnings this week. We're not going to cover all the earnings. We're just going to cover the reactions and what it says to us. Look at Monday. Monday, we had Verizon, not something too important that they said, NXPI as well. Monday was kind of calm. Then we got Tuesday. Tuesday, we got Spotify with an increased subscriptions and increasing their price. So they were up. GM, not a good earnings. And of course, trying to lower everything. That's GM. They went down. We saw Tesla with mediocre to bad earnings, I want to say. But actually, the earnings call was even worse. As usual, Elon Musk and his team do not know how to run an earnings call, and the stock you saw down. Actually, after the earnings, it was down. The day after was down 10%. Google or Alphabet, very strong earnings, but a lot of investment in AI. They're coming out and saying, at least from what they believe, they need to overinvest rather than underinvest in the AI boom or the AI economy. And they saw their shares going down as a result of that. On Wednesday, we got Chipotle with a pretty good report, but the stock sold on the news. We got Ford with bad earnings. The stock got hammered. And ServiceNow with good earnings. The stock went up. ServiceNow, very important to say, they are seeing very rapid growth in generative AI. That's ServiceNow. That brings us to Thursday. Thursday was a very bad day for Dexcom. Crashed more than 30% on a not such a worse earnings, but mainly lowering their forecast, and the stock got hammered. On the other side, we got Deckers up after the reports by 10%. And Friday, 3M, Triple M, with their best day since 1980, something like that, on very solid earnings. Let's talk about the news. Last weekend, CrowdStrike, we talked about it last week, but they are updating that 97% of all their Windows sensors are up, and everything should be up and running. Wasn't a good week for CrowdStrike and Microsoft on that front. If you haven't slept underneath a rock, you probably know that Joe Biden decided not to run for presidency and updated everyone on this note on July 21st. And an hour later, giving his endorsement to Kamala Harris, which for the first 2 days after getting the endorsement, Kamala Harris, I think, made probably around 1,000 calls, getting all the Democratic Party behind her, and also getting over $100 million in donation for her campaign. That, of course, automatically ignites the presidential candidacy between her and Trump. The small funny thing is that the Democratic Party will not have a Democratic choice in who's going to lead the Democratic Party, because basically if everyone endorses Kamala Harris, then she will probably be the one, and that's not democratic, but put that aside. U.S. economy, or GDP, grows in a pace of 2.8% in the second quarter. Grew, actually, because it's second quarter. Very strong growth. The economy is strong and solid, no recession. And when you look at this, the recession probably happened in 2022. No one declared it, no one talked about it, but it probably happened. Currently, we do not see the growth slowing down. Maybe we are one report away from that, which has been said to us from Q3 2022 all the way to today. We're just one report from a recession. Well, it didn't hit the US. Ethereum ETF launched this week. Several of ETFs, all of them doing the same thing, basically, providing you the ability to buy ETF without opening a crypto wallet or a crypto platform or anything like that, and to trade it. There are several. The difference between them is mainly their fees. For at least at the beginning, most of them are going to launch free of charge. Then they're going to add some fee. The fee is not dramatic. This is for the whole year on an annual basis. It's not that dramatic. I don't really see the difference between them. I don't think there is a difference between them. The only is let's call it the issuer, and maybe the clearinghouse, the exchange that they're on. That's all. You just need to choose which one you believe more in, and that's it. From a brand perspective, there's no, at least from what I know, and again, put that with a grain of salt, you need to check it. There's no difference from a security perspective. The Israeli startup Wiz rejected Alphabet's takeover bid. They offered them $23 billion. And Wiz said, you know what, we're going to take our own chances in our hands, and we're going to try to IPO. In an email, I wanted to say letter, but no one sends letters anymore. In an email that their CEO and founder of Wiz sent the employees, says our next target is $1 billion in ARR. And once we hit that, we will probably, or before that, we will IPO. When we look at Meta, so that was Google. We're going to talk about Google in a second as well. Meta launched Llama 3.1, which should be the strongest LLM, the strongest model, the strongest GPT in the market. If you are not, let's call it, if you're not trying ChatGPT, if you're not using it on a day-to-day basis, if you're not, and when I'm saying GPT, it can be Gemini, it can be Claude 3.5, it can be Llama, it doesn't really matter. If you're not educated on that, do yourself a favor. That train has left the station. Educate yourself. Spend the time. Start using it. Force yourself to use it. Why? Because everyone is using it. It's no longer something that only 10% are using. Everyone is using that, and there's a saying that a lot of people take credit for. I'm not going to take credit. I'm just going to tell you that you're probably going to be replaced by a person that knows how to use AI. So don't be that person. And if you want your hair to grow better, then you should start using GPT, because I remember the days where Mark Zuckerberg looked like this and not like this. So Maybe I should start using more of the GPTs. Pfizer, ticker PFE, announces positive top-line results for their phase 3 study for hemophilia. It's a gene therapy. We're going to see a lot of gene therapies from a lot of companies, and it's very encouraging because it means that all the drugs that are being created right now are better, more focused, and provide better results. Lisa Su spent the day with Tesla, mainly women, but also others, and talked about AI and leadership. And it's very interesting because we haven't heard in the past any connection between AMD and Tesla. And that's very, very encouraging to hear. And this is another reason why Google fell for the week. OpenAI launches, at least it's not even a beta, I want to say it's an alpha, their search GPT, the ability to ask questions and get the answers, but also be connected to the internet in a more profound way. We haven't really used it. We only saw demos and mock-ups. You should join the waitlist. Don't wait, and get your ability to start using that. Beth Kindig from IO Fund updates us that Google and I'm going to say it. I'm going to lower the volume so no one hears it. Google and Microsoft are allowing Chinese firms to access NVIDIA's GPU in data centers which are located outside of China. This is not allowed. They're not allowed to let Chinese companies use the most advanced GPUs that NVIDIA has. Don't quote me on it. And Amazon going to report this week, at least from the data that we have from Adobe, they've reached a record sales in the 2 days of Prime, better than last year, which was better than others. Liz Young Thomas updates us that after 356 days of no 2% decline in the S&P 500 since 21st of February 2023, we finally got to 2%. I'm not sure you were that happy on that day, but this week we got a 2% correction for the S&P 500. This led almost a 4% correction on the NASDAQ. A very brutal day during the week, but we recovered like we do from all these corrections. This was a technical correction that was, I want to say planned, but it wasn't really planned. It was in the cards for 356 days. It was one of the longest stretches that we saw of a non 2% correction. And yes, it happened. U.S. Transportation Department opens an investigation into Delta, ticker DAL, to better understand how come it took them almost a week to fix their flights with all the cancellations. And it is pretty strange. Bitcoin conference is being held during the weekend in Nashville. We heard Semler Scientific, ticker is SMLR, a CEO saying that this is the person in the middle, saying he would like to convert some of his cash and some of his equity of our company's stock into Bitcoin. And also Michael Saylor here on your right, on his left, says that if you want to create your own wealth, you should invest in Bitcoin as early as now. He had a very, very interesting presentation. You should watch it. Just Google Bitcoin 2024 Michael Saylor and you will find it. Jack Dorsey, another Bitcoin maximalist, says that Block or Square, that's a ticker SQ, should get ready to a reorg. And he also said the reorg is going to be big and disruptive or uncomfortable. I believe he's going to do an Elon Musk Twitter, a 50 to 75% reduction in labor. I would be surprised if he does something not radical after such an email. If it will be 20%, it's not big, disruptive, and uncomfortable. If it's 50%, it is. If it's 75%, it meets the criteria. Square is the ticker. And Roche is not publicly traded in the New York Stock Exchange or in NASDAQ, but created a lot of turmoil in the last 2 weeks for Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, which are ticker LLY and NVO. They're progressing in, let's call it the pill. It's this pill that will be instead of injections for GLP-1. And of course, the market says, okay, more competition in. Maybe Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk will not grow in the pace that they are growing right now. I don't really believe it. I believe they are going to grow very heavily, with Roche growing as well, and with other companies. The reason for that is pretty easy. It's going to take time for Roche to get the FDA approval. It's going to get time for Roche to produce these, of course, finish the trials, which they haven't finished. They have at least 6 to 12 months until this really catches up. In that time, Both Novo and Eli Lilly might also do the same, or even acquire a company that has those abilities. So I do think there will be more competition, but I think the GLP-1 market is so big that everyone will have, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, we have 30% obese only in the US, not even talking about other companies. Tilray got an approval to sell cannabis in Germany. Korean Air bought more planes, 40 more planes from Boeing. And Jersey City, very close to me, decided to allocate a percentage of their pension fund into buying Bitcoin. At least that's what their mayor announced. And RFK Jr. in the Bitcoin conference says that if he would be president, he would buy 550 Bitcoins a day until he builds a reserve of 4 million Bitcoins for the US. But you shouldn't be worried too much, or you shouldn't refresh your charts, because he will not be president. I'm willing to bet on that. And not because I have anything against him. The odds are stacked against him. You should see. This is predicted website. He's currently at around 2% likelihood. This is the way the gambling is running right now. 54% for Trump, 48% for Kamala Harris. And actually 2 days ago, she was even 50 and he was 53. So they were pretty close. Now they kind of opened up due to the Bitcoin conference, but it doesn't really matter. He's at 2%. It's like I would say, look, if I'm president, I would buy 1,000 Bitcoins every day. One, I wasn't born in the US, so I can't be president. And second, it doesn't really matter. I don't have any likelihood of being president, but people can say whatever they want. You should also do it. Send an email to your, don't do it. You know what? Never mind. Don't do it. Next week. This is what's going to happen next week. Earnings. Monday, we get McDonald's and Tilray. Monday is a no-brainer. No sweat. Then we get to Tuesday. Before the bell, we get SoFi, PayPal, Pfizer, Procter, Corning. After the bell, we get AMD, Microsoft, Starbucks, Arista Networks, Pinterest, First Solar, Caesars, Lemonade, Electronic Arts. All that happening Tuesday. Wednesday, before the bell, we get Boeing, Norwegian, Wingstop, Kraft, Altria, Humana, Cameco, Generac, MasterCard, and Tiva. All of these before the bell. 2 p.m. Wednesday, we get the Fed decision on rate hikes. Likelihood, no change, but you never know. Then, 2:30, all the hours are Eastern. 2:30, we get the press conference, where Powell will probably start setting the stage into the fact that he's gonna raise rates, that he's gonna raise rates. Oh my God, lower rates in the next meeting. Then after the close, we get Meta, ARM, Qualcomm, Carvana, Lam Research, Western Digital, Riot, Paycom, and Albemarle. That brings us to Thursday, the big Thursday. Before the bell, Moderna, Crocs, Mobileye, ConocoPhillips, Wayfair, SiriusXM, Canada Goose. That's only before the bell. After the bell, Amazon. After close, sorry. Amazon, Apple, Intel. I don't know why they're sorted that way and not Apple first. Never mind. It's because it's alphabet or... No, it's not. Never mind. I don't know why. Intel, Coinbase, DraftKings, Roku, Square, which we know was in the news, Mara, Marathon, Booking Holdings, Mercado Libre, and that brings us to Friday. If you don't have any more fuel in the tank, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Sundial is a cannabis grower, and others. This is a crazy, crazy week ahead of us. We talked about the Fed, so we're not going to look at the macroeconomic calendar. We talked about that. That brings us to the S&P 500, which is here, represented by the SPY, the ETF that follows it. Actually, we're seeing more and more inflows into the VU. VU is currently the biggest ETF for the S&P 500. The reason why we're not looking at VU and we're looking at SPY is just to make it easy, because SPY's price is almost 10th of the SPX, which is the average. You cannot buy an average, you can buy an ETF following the average, and just because the price is in approximate, very close to that, that's why we're using SPY as a reference. And now let's talk about the SPY. What we are seeing on the SPY. Okay, so we had an upward channel, and we broke it on Thursday. We, on Friday, came back in. What you're seeing here is Japanese candlesticks. I can change it to line charts, or I can keep it Japanese candlesticks. It doesn't really matter. Hopefully, we will not break the 536. 536 was a support after closing a gap. There was a gap here. A gap is when we open higher than we closed the day before. That's a gap, and we don't correct to close that difference in price. 80% of gaps are closed, just for you to know, and we're going up. Okay. What are our lines in the sand? 536 or 537 gets broken. we might go down to around 533 or maybe even to 524. If we don't, turns around, keeps going up, we have a gap here on top, a gap between 549 and 552, and another gap between 56 and 562, and we're in the all-time highs. I don't know which way we're going to go. I do know that Friday was a bit more encouraging, but with rate cuts or Fed decision, with all the earnings that we're going to get, it's going to be an amazing week. We're going to meet here next week, same time, same place. I'm Micha Stocks, and on a personal note, this week, my Hebrew channel, which is the bigger channel, is probably going to celebrate 100K subscribers. Congrats. I will talk to you next week, and I'll update you if we got to 100K. Till next time, bye-bye.